Welcome, everyone, to the Daily Fix Show on the Fantasy and Friends podcast. I am your host, Keith Flemming. This is sadly the last episode of what I feel like has been a really great season of the show. But we're here to talk about the Super Bowl, hopefully win you some money in your lineups. Normally, I would be introducing my co-host, Joe the Brain Matz. He is fashionably late at this moment. He will be on soon. But I am thrilled to have with me, three of the guys from the Fantasy and Frames, part of the core of the great Fantasy and Frames crew, my man Tyler Howell, Jorge Edwards, and Nate Markham. What's going on, guys?
Nothing, Keith. I am jealous of your music. I love your intro music. You might have the best.
It is a medication commercial jingle, though, too. I hear it all the time. I'm like, that's ours. But I am most excited about, no offense to my Frames guy. We got the great Bob Harris on here. Bob is at Football Diehard on Twitter. He's a senior editor for Football Diehards, host of his own Fantasy Sirius XM show. And can I call you a friend of the pod at this point, Bob?
I would be offended if you called me something else. And I'm like impressed to be here squeezed in amongst all the frames. I'm like framed, literally framed.
Well, you're dead.
Joe shows up and put him on top of me and all these.
Well, that made my night for you saying that. I appreciate that. We're here obviously to talk about the Super Bowl. I wanted to have you on just for a little bit to talk about the game. But before we get into that, what's your Super Bowl tradition? What do you normally do on the big game?
Normally, the day of the big game, I like for the last few years, I haven't had to work. Even like when we were still doing a lot more traveling with Sirius, and we were all there at Radio Row doing the stuff. I'd fly home Saturday to be home for the game on Sunday. I've been to the game, so once you've been to one, you realize how much better it is to watch it at home. And I watch it home quietly. This year, tomorrow I have a show, or Sunday. Today's not Saturday, is it?
We'll get to Sunday eventually.
The confusion happens. You'll see. You'll get old sometime. So this year I'm doing a pregame show, though, from 3 to 6 on Sirius XM. Mike Dempsey and I will be joined by I think pretty much every host on Sirius will come on and visit with us at times. And then I'll watch the game, which is like kind of okay because you hit that point where after the first 30 hours of pregame, you think like, wow, I need a break from pregame. And my show will be the break from pregame for me and hopefully for everyone out there. Just jump on in. We'll have a good time. We'll talk a lot of props and do a lot of stuff like that. So, and probably set DraftKings lineup. I'm sure you guys are going to get into all that this evening.
Oh, yeah.
I have been dabbling a little bit and have laid some baseline lineups, but we'll talk more about that on Sunday as well. And I'll probably be listening the rest of the night so I don't screw anything up too bad.
Well, we can't wait to hear that. We'll definitely check that out. All right. There's two big questions. I feel like especially when you're doing captain's lineups, you got to figure out what's the game script going to be.
Right.
Because there's a lot less options. You got to build a lineup off of, this is how I see it can go. So let's kind of go over each. The Eagles will win if they do this.
If they hit some big plays to Devontae Smith, according to one of my lineups. I think the big play is like burning the Chiefs secondary is going to be their path to success. And Jalen Hurts having a big day throwing the ball. He hasn't quite been the same guy since he's come back from the shoulder injury, but I'm hoping the 2 weeks off help him out. Look, the Eagles are the better team, right? They've got the depth of the offense, just the better roster. Come on, Nate.
I'm only here for facial expressions when anybody says anything bad against the Chiefs.
Better overall roster. I mean, look, the Chiefs surprised me the way their defense played against the Bengals. I thought it was better than I expected, and it may be better than I expect this week. But just in general, the roster is not quite as robust as the Eagles, especially on defense and the offensive line as well. Although the Chiefs' offensive line is playing well too, but I just think the depth and everything, gives the Eagles a little bit of an edge, hence the 1.5 spread. I think that's a pretty reasonable amount. It's not like over the top. But I think, if they're going to win this game, they're going to need to play good defense and they're going to need to make some big plays, whether it's A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith. I think both are capable of it. Maybe even Quez Watkins, I mean, there's a lot of cheap dart tosses out there. I think everyone's in play this week, right? Because there's only 2 teams playing. But I do think it's going to be like A.J. Brown and Smith and Jalen Hurts are the pieces that I think need to really come through.
To your point, last time the Eagles were in a Super Bowl, I don't think anybody had Trey Burton throwing a passing touchdown to Nick Foles. So anything can happen in these games for sure. All right, the other way around. The Chiefs will win if what?
So for sure, if Mahomes is able to avoid any aggravations to his injury and has a reasonable game, and Travis Kelce is Travis Kelce. Right. But I think there's like for the Chiefs, there's multiple paths. I think the teams that have really handled the Eagles have run the ball well. That's kind of separated those teams. So could this be a surprising Isaiah Pacheco, heavy game if he comes out and has some early success and it continues? I think that's entirely possible. It's a tough pass rush, man. You'll be surprised to learn the Eagles have many people who have double-digit sacks. I was surprised. No. They're very good. They're really good at the coverages. So, I mean, some receivers going to show up. What did Marcus Grant say on his Twitter from our buddy from NFL Network? It's like the Chiefs receiving core is like, the refrigerator where there's a bunch of ingredients and not a meal, right? But you can kind of cobble things together, and that seems to be what the Chiefs are doing. But Travis Kelce is the piece. If it's going to be the Mahomes, if it's going to be the passing attack, look, I love Jerick McKinnon. I was on a big Jerick McKinnon run, late in the season, playing him as after picking him up as a free agent. But I think at this point with Mahomes a little nicked up and with a really strong pass rush, one of the reasons the Chiefs like Jerick McKinnon is because he's a great pass blocker as well, or at least knows the scheme well enough to be that guy. So, I mean, he could be it for sure. But I think the safest bet to me is Mahomes to Kelce, because Kelce is the safest bet in pretty much every single opportunity you have to bet on Travis Kelce.
Yeah, I think if you're going to have Mahomes or Kelce as your captain, you have to have both. Yep. You just have to go all in and then fill in kind of around that.
That's I'll just to throw it out there because I know you guys are going to be talking about my base, lineup, just starting point where I'm going to start working off of is Kelce as my captain and Mahomes in the lineup as well. And, I'll pivot off that and there'll be other lineups. But as I set just my initial baseline lineup, that's it.
All right. And then how do you see this game most likely playing out?
I see this game most likely playing out the Eagles edging out a hard-fought victory unless Patrick Mahomes all over them, right? That's, to me, that's the key here, right? I totally believe the Eagles have the better overall roster, are a better team. I don't think they're a better coach team, and I don't think you could ever dismiss what Patrick Mahomes, the difference-making ability he has. And that's going to be the difference. I think for me, I'm going to go with the Eagles. If I was laying money on it, I'd probably take the Eagles here. But I do think that Patrick Mahomes is always going to be a path to victory for the Chiefs, no matter who they're playing.
All right, one more question. I'm gonna let you get you out of here because I really do appreciate you doing this. Do you get depressed at this time of the year with football kind of ramping down? And I mean, I know we have obviously Dynasty and the draft coming through and all those kind of things. There's stuff to keep us busy. And I know you're more busy than most, but it's just, I get really down this time of year when it's like, man, there won't be a meaningful football game for 6 months. No,
I mean, this is the time when you start making hay and you start, we were talking a little bit before. I mean, there was a day when I was doing this and, when I first started doing this, that the off season was the time that, the people in the industry, we got ahead. Now there is no time for us to get ahead. There's time for us to keep up. And I like to keep up. We make a bunch of magazines here at Fantasy Sports Publications. So I'll start working on those next week. I'll have radio shows, but you mentioned it. I mean, the NFL has designed the ultimate 365-day reality show. Everything turns into something else, right? So we're going to sit here and we're going to watch the Super Bowl, and then we're going to start talking about the combine. Then we're going to talk about nothing but the combine until free agency starts. Then we're going to talk about free agency until draft season starts. Then we're going to talk about the draft until mini camps start. Then we're going to be watching mini camps with bated breath for every single move, every single snap count, every single thing that we can see. Then we'll get into mini camps. And there's going to be a month of June when we all hope that nobody gets arrested. And then training camp start in July.
Or injured,
right? I mean, it's going to be something, somebody, there's always, there's always the TMZ aspect of the business that's going to happen. But regardless, I mean, that's the point is the NFL has figured out how to keep this cash cow cashing out. Right. And except for the Pro Bowl, they still haven't figured that out. There's not a more miserable week of football or quasi football or football related activities. It's like what is like the like cheese like product? What is that? Like Cheese Whiz? I don't know. It's not actually the cheese, but it's like they can pretend it's cheese. The Pro Bowl weekend is like, okay, we got to make some money. I remember like the first Super Bowl I went to here in Dallas was the Packers Steelers. There was like a blizzard here and everything. That was my first exposure to the NFL experience, and it was off-site, and it was probably the last exposure to the NFL experience I ever needed, right? I mean, okay, I know what this is. They moved it into Radio Row, so I saw a lot more of them and paid zero attention to them. The Pro Bowl is like the NFL experience of the NFL season. It has become ridiculous. Josh Jacobs said it best. They need to just do away with it. I mean, honestly, it's become, Alvin Kamara says they should have gotten away with it last year, but I don't know.
What do you think about the loser bowl? I've heard this pitch where 1 and 2 play that weekend. Winner gets the number 1 pick.
That would be expensive for them. I don't know that they would go for that. And if somebody got hurt, they would freak out.
Right.
But I mean, just think about the last time you saw an actual Pro Bowl game, right? Where you see linemen literally just standing up and facing each other and not doing anything. I mean, how disrespectful to the game is that? And I think it's become even less respectful since. I mean, I guess it couldn't be more disrespectful than just, playing it, pretending you're playing a game and not playing a game. But all this stuff that they were doing to replace the not playing the game was not that much better than not playing the game. I'm Bob Harris. Follow me on Twitter.
It felt like a cheap American Gladiators.
Yes.
Bob, I really appreciate you coming on.
I don't feel strongly about it, though.
Is there anything you want to plug before you get out of here?
I want to plug this podcast. It's fantastic. I love coming on it. I want to plug Fantasy and Frames, an up-and-coming, rising superstar company. I love all the people associated with it. Love seeing them in August when I go to Canton. And just always a blast hanging out with you guys, and appreciate you having me on. And that's what I want to plug. Those things.
You are the man, Bob. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on, and we will definitely be checking out your show on Super Bowl Sunday.
Thanks for having me, and invite me back. I'll show
Absolutely
up.
will. That I can promise you. Thanks,
later,
Bob.
guys.
See you later, Bob.
Yeah.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Can we just have an entire show where we brainstorm ideas of what they should do at the Pro Bowl?
I like it. I'm down.
Did you guys watch Thursday, the skills competition at all?
I've yet to watch it. I did want to watch it, but is it the traditional skills competition that they had back in the day where it's like the running obstacle course for the quarterbacks and the...
No. Unfortunately, it had the making of what seemed to be a positive. They started off that I saw at least, and there was other things. I got a late start. I saw the quarterback skills, the competition, the accuracy competition. Drones are moving, you're hitting the targets and whatnot. Derek Carr blew it out of the water. That in itself
Derek Carr's awesome.
Was great. The problem was everything else then just became kind of dumb. Like it was a catch competition between the linemen, basically, where they had a judge machine. Competition. They did have a long drive for golf competition, and yet, I mean, some of those guys were actually good golfers, and they won. But they incorporated a lot of goofy. Like they had the best catch where Stephon Diggs was. I don't remember if Diggs was in the harness above Fremont Street, flying down the zip line, and they threw it up and he caught it. It's good for like humor, but like an actual skills competition is not a bad program. That's the NHL. That's how they make all their hay for, and MLB. I mean, the home run derby has more viewers than the actual All-Star game, I would imagine. Yeah, exactly right. I mean, all those things people want to see, and there's only so much you can do. I would love to see a 40-yard dash competition, the fastest man. But again, these mega $1 million contracts are always concerning if someone pulls a hammy or tears a muscle in a meaningless scrimmage or event.
Yeah,
I say go esports. Too.
There you go. That's not a bad option.
Well, Joe is still fashionably late. I love my boy. We went to the Senior Bowl, and like I said, I've learned Joe. A little snail sometimes, but he will be here soon. But we talked about it with Bob. Let's go around. I'll start with Nate. How do you see this game playing out?
Very similar to what Bob was saying. The heart in me wants to say the Chiefs by 3. I do believe that it will come down to probably that last possession, and whoever has that. The question you asked Bob is if-then scenarios. And that's how I see the Chiefs staying in this game, is basically keeping Patrick Mahomes upright. That offensive line has to stay intact. They have to worry, that right side more than anything. Trey Smith was banged up. Andrew Wiley is not a liability, but he's, if there's an area of concern, that's it. And Hassan Reddick has been really good over that left end. And so that's my concern. But I do believe this would be I think the over, like Tyler and I said earlier, will get hit. I could see 31-28, 28-24 type score, somewhere between 3 to 4 points. I'm going to lean Kansas City just because, even though Bob is correct, the Eagles have a better 1 through 53 team. Unfortunately, number 1 is number 15, and that's who I'm going to lean on. And I'm going to say it's a Patrick Mahomes-led attack, and it's hard to bet against him.
Number 287 is pretty good, too.
He's very, very good.
All right, Tyler, same question.
All right, so Bob did make a lot of sense when he said, the Eagles could win if they have a big play from Jalen Hurts, if they have big plays from Devontae Smith, big plays from A.J. Brown. And then, the Chiefs can win if, Patrick Mahomes is himself. Okay, that makes sense. However, I'm just going with the entire season. I said it before the show, and I'm sticking with it. The Eagles have been the best team in the NFL all year, and I think they are really going to put on a display in the ground game. I think there's going to be a lot of ground game from both teams, as Isaiah Pacheco, Miles Sanders, Jalen Hurts, all of that. But I think they're just going to scrape by the over, and I think the Eagles are going to pull it out at the end.
Jorge.
There are two scenarios that I see this playing out. I think for me, however, the one that I believe more is I think Philly's going to jump out early. I think you're going to see a lot of their explosive plays. And because this is the Daily Fix show, and it's because you are the host of the show, I'm going to say it reminds me a little bit of Atlanta, New England from a couple of years ago. I'm not saying Philadelphia is going to go up 28-3 on Patrick Mahomes. I do think they're going to jump out early. I do see Kansas City staying with them, though. For me, it really comes down to the fact that, look, the Eagles' offensive line is one of the best offensive lines in all of football. Those bookend tackles, they do not let up pressures. But all it takes is a 3-point game, a 5-point game in the fourth quarter on third down for Chris Jones to go all Chris Jones and make a play, give the ball back to Patrick Mahomes. And if you get the ball back to Patrick Mahomes, in Patrick Mahomes we trust. This is, I think you referenced it earlier, Keith, whether it was during the show or before the show, we're talking about the similarities and the feeling that this gives you towards the Super Bowl with the Seahawks and the Broncos, where it was just like, the Broncos ran into a buzzsaw. The difference here being is, the Broncos had a, 1.5 armed Peyton Manning throwing the ball down the field. Here you have Patrick Mahomes with his cannon, with youth on his side, with athleticism on his side, even though he is nursing that sprained ankle. I think this is either going to be a complete domination by the Eagles, or you're going to see Patrick Mahomes' finest hour.
I'm with mediocre Monty, who thinks that was ruthless, Jorge. There was no need to bring up the Falcons Super Bowl. You want to talk about a shot in the back? Jesus. Joe's not even here to enjoy it either.
Hey, Keith, the good news is Jalen Hurts is still playing the game after he almost got taken out by a railing at FedEx Field. So,
Very fair.
Easy. Okay. Well, it's fair. It's fair. It's fair. It's fair.
And we're going to get into lineups here in just a second, but I do, it's my contrarian lineup, because if you're going to pick, is it more likely that Patrick Mahomes is just a little bit better than the Eagles? Yeah, that's probably the most likely outcome. I mean, he's already one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And I'm not sure if he had a high ankle sprain, but his leg was fucked up last week, and he still was unbelievable despite losing all those receivers. They're going to be more healthy for this game from the offensive side than they were for a majority of the game versus the Bengals. Mm-hmm. But just don't forget, the Eagles get pressure. Like, goodness gracious. They've had 3+ sacks in 9 of their last 11 games, 5 or more in 6 of them. And if they can get after the quarterback, that's what Tampa Bay did. Remember to Kansas City in the last Super Bowl that went really bad. So I will have one lineup where basically I'm going all in where the Eagles D. Actually, let's just get right into that. We'll go ahead and do that. So I'm going to do my contrarian, and then I'll give you my full lineup at the end, and we're going to get your guys' lineups just a second. But I'm going to go with the Eagles D 5,400 as my captain. They've had double digits in 4 or 5, 9 points or more on 7 of 8 on DK. Again, it was 3 or more sacks in 12 of their last 13 games, 5 or more in 7 of their last 13. They set the single season record for most sacks by a team. They caused at least 1 turnover in 10 of 12, and they've averaged 8.6 points per game over the last 12 on DK. By doing that, it gives me a ton of flexibility with this lineup. It's risky always to have a lower price guy as your captain, but honestly, it's the easiest way if you can get it right to do very well in the event. So I'm going to add Jalen Hurts, 11,200 as my first flex. He's had 19.5 points per game in the playoffs, scored 20 plus in 8 of 9 his last 9 regular season games. Big thing for me, I think he's going to run a lot. 30 plus rushing yards in 5 of his last 7. 9 rushing attempts or more in 7 of his last 10. Multiple passing touchdowns in 8 of his last 11. And he just scores. We called him the human cheat code on this pod last year. 25 points or more on DK in 9 of his last 16. 20 points or more in 13 of 16. That's usually his floor, especially with his running. Then give me Travis Kelce, of course, 10,600. By playing the Eagles D, again, it gives me a lot of flexibility with this lineup. So I'm basically picking the guys that I think are most likely to go off. The Eagles are up. It's even more Kelce. And I keep saying this. I said it the first week of the playoffs. I said it the second. Travis Kelce should be in any fantasy football lineup you have this week or during the playoffs. In his last 8 playoff games, he's averaging over 9 receptions per game. He has 7 or more in 8 of 9 of those, averaging over 100 yards per game, 9 touchdowns, scored in 7 of 8 of those games. He scored 20-plus points on DK in all 8. The 20.8 that he scored last week was his lowest of those 8 games by over 3 points. So he had scored 24 points or more in the first the other 7. It's just hard to argue Kelce should not be in any of your lineups. Miles Sanders is my next flex, 7,800. Again, I think if the D does well, which they better with them being my captain, should mean a lot of Sanders and the Eagles running the ball where they can keep the Chiefs defense winded and try to just make the Chiefs have to really grind out, get first downs because they have a few 3-and-outs when the Eagles are rushing well. This game could get ugly. He's averaged 13.5 points per game in the playoffs, 26 rush attempts, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns. Both of those games were over by the second half. So I think it's very encouraging. He's seen that many carries in 2 blowout games. In his games this year with 15-plus carries, he's averaging almost 17 points per game. He's 4th in the league in red zone touches. He's seen 22 red zone touches just in his last 9 games, 3 or more in 6 of his last 8. It's a really good chance he ends up scoring a touchdown. And I just think the Eagles need Sanders to have a good game to win this. Finally, Devontae Smith, 8,600. Seen 8 or more targets in 9 of his last 10, 5 or more receptions in 8 of 10, 17 points or more on DK in 6 of 8. And his worst game by far was last week, again versus the Niners, where it got out of hand early. They did credit him with a catch that he didn't really make, but he had a bad game. He only had 4.6 points. I obviously want a receiver having Hurts in this lineup to stack it with. I actually like Goddard the most out of all Eagles receivers. I just think his floor is the highest this week, but Smith just has such a higher ceiling. Reminder, KC is 28th to wide receivers on DK. And I'm sorry, we need 6 people to fill out my lineup, not 5. I have one more. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 6,200, arguably the most dangerous receiver on this Chiefs roster, at least big play potential-wise. In a must-win situation with all the receivers banged up last week. He came through in the AFC title game. He saw the most targets he's seen all season in 8, turned it into 6 catches, 116 yards, and a score, 26.6 points on DK. The big thing I like about him, he lines up 30% of the time in the slot, a place that you can really attack this Phillies D. I've been talking about it all year. They gave up 23 touchdowns. That was 3rd in the NFL to receivers from the slot and over 13 receptions per game. So that is my contrarian lineup. Joe Matz, it's nice of you to join us. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man.
All right.
I was stressing about this game because I'm having a hard time figuring out exactly how this one plays out.
That's what's Vegas saying. Well, since you're late to the party, we've all kind of given our game script. How do you see this game playing out? Or what are you leaning towards?
The one thing I'm definitely leaning towards is points. I think this Eagles defense, as good as they are, and I do think they're very good, they haven't truly been tested that often. I know I was reading an article that said if you take the top 12 QBs in QBR, they have played only 4 games against those QBs, and 2 of those are Giants games, where anyone who watched the Giants playoff game or the regular season one with Daniel Jones pretty easily overwhelmed our offense, which makes sense. When they faced Dak Prescott, the Cowboys scored 40 points. When they faced Jared Goff, the Lions scored 35.
They didn't have Jalen Hurts in that game, though, which I think is really big. When you don't have Hurts to run the ball,
yeah, I mean that hurts. You know, it hurts to not have Hurts. But yeah, I just think the other thing too is I believe in Mahomes regardless of the game script here. I read a bunch of stuff. He's been better this year. EPA per drop back, the lower their chances of winning were. So he's been better when they've been down. So I think if the Eagles get up early, Mahomes plays great, gets him back in it. If the Chiefs are up early, it's because Mahomes is playing great. So I think Mahomes, Kelsey for me are the 2 guys. I don't have either of them in captain slots because of the expense, but I'm locking them in. I want both of them. And then, yeah, I trust the Eagles to be able to scheme up to score some points here. I think Spags will have some stuff that Hurts hasn't seen, and that could throw him off early. But I trust this Eagles coaching staff to figure things out. And I also just think Sirianni is the best guy on 4th downs. He's going to get them extra plays by converting a couple of 4th downs in this one. So, yeah, points. I don't know who wins. I'll tell you that I looked back over the last 6 Super Bowls. I correctly predicted the winner 3 times. It was the 3 times that the Eagles and Chiefs were not in the Super Bowl. So I've missed every Mahomes Super Bowl. I missed the full Super Bowl. So whenever I decide, I think people should fade me on whoever wins the game. But I think points. That's the one thing I feel confident in. Both these offense. The winner scores over 30. That's where I'm at. I think that's the one confident thing I have. So it's just finding the right guys to put in your lineup because the points will be there.
All right, Tyler, let me hear your lineup.
All right. So I am going to agree with you wholly on Devontae Smith. I think people, and we're talking Dynasty here a little bit. Devontae Smith should be talked about in the same breath as some of the best receivers in the NFL. He's in his 2nd year. He's truly come into his own. And a year from now, 2 years from now, I don't think we'll be able to decide who the best receiver on the Eagles is, whether it's him or A.J. Brown. And you kind of illustrated it with all of his points. But just to say what the end of his season looked like, all the way up to that Niners game, which was just a disaster.
Right.
5 for 102 and 1, 5 for 64 and 1, 5 for 126, 8 for 113 and 2, 9 for 115, 7 for 67, 6 for 61 and 1. He just puts up numbers. He's really damn good, and I'm excited to hopefully see him have a true breakout game on this massive national stage. So
maybe
that's
like
why
T. Higgins last year, right? It's exactly what happened with the Bengals.
Absolutely. So I had to put him as my captain to give myself a little bit of flexibility. I was trying to figure out a way to get Mahomes or Hurts or Kelsey in there. Just couldn't afford it. So I obviously have Kelsey. You have to. You absolutely have to. Mm-hmm. The one weak point, as we said on the Eagles, is the linebackers. They are just going to attack that over and over and over again, just like they always do. I also have, to go with my ground game prediction, I have Isaiah Pacheco and Miles Sanders in there. I think we're going to see a lot of both of them. And I'll tell you what, man, every time I've watched a Chiefs game over the last month, it's been 1, and then it's been 2, and then it's been 3 Isaiah Pacheco runs. We're like, God, this guy's really damn good. So I'm excited to watch him run the ball. And I was $100 short to get Jalen Hurts in there, so I went Patrick Mahomes.
Wow,
And
what a tough beat there.
Yeah. I settled for Mahomes. And the only reason I did that is because I didn't want to put an absolute zero in as my last guy. I went with Blake Bell. Take that minuscule chance of a touchdown.
I like it. I love it. In these kind of lineups, I think it's important to take a swing at that. Jorge, what you got?
So I like Tyler. I have Devonta Smith as my captain. I actually have next, starting with my first flex, I have the Eagles defense. I think there's a scenario where they can come to play and really dominate this game. I have Isaiah Pacheco. I have AJ Brown, Goddard, and I'm rounding out with Kelsey.
I like it. I'm sorry, the captain's also Smith, right?
That is correct. Yes.
I like this. I do. I like Devontae a lot. We went over it last couple of weeks. Over his last 10 games, he has more targets, receptions, yards, touchdowns, and points per game on DK than AJ Brown. He's been the number one receiver. They're both really good, but I'm just saying Devontae's actually better and he's consistently cheaper. All right, Nate, let me get your all Chiefs DFS lineup.
No, you can't. That's the problem. They're too good. You can't fit everybody onto that in doing so. But in reality, the one thing that I wanted to do, as you guys have all touched on, is make sure to get Kelsey in. I'm not going to have him as my captain, like you said, monetary reasons why that kind of inhibited that a little bit. But I do have Kelsey. I'm going to stack it. I mean, with Mahomes, you have the Chiefs right now coming off of a 2021 season, of course, that we all know how, dangerous they were. You get rid of Tyreek Hill and all they do is they lead the NFL in about every major scoring statistic possible. And it's hard not to have Mahomes and Kelsey. My concern, of course, is staying upright, but I just got to believe that with the increased weapons, we saw that how dangerous he was last week. Name who was the, who was the number 2 wide receiver last week? Anybody? No? Yeah, exactly.
Was that Sky Moore?
Justin Watson?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know the answer, but hearing those 3 names, I was expecting someone to say Marcus Kemp because any one of those 3, and now we have everybody short of Mecole Hardman back. The concern with that, though, that makes me not want to lean towards any of those wide receivers. Hence why you'll see that taken away. So my captain spot is actually Kenneth Gainwell. If there's an area of concern against the Chiefs, it's that, the establishment of the running game. And Kenneth Gainwell in the last 2 games in the playoffs, granted, they're both blowouts. So it's a little jaded and a little hard to use this as the baseline. But you have a 22-point outing against the Giants, blowout. You have another 10-point outing, 9.4 against San Francisco. The key to this, though, is I think that in overall usage now in the playoffs, they're pretty much even between Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell. I expect Miles Sanders to get the heavier workload, but I think that in a situation where if Philly needs to do one thing well, if there's any way they can write a script to win this game, it's going to be to establish the run, because twofold. Number one, obviously, it's a weakness of the Chiefs, despite the secondary being poor as far as what it looks like on paper. They showed last week the young guys kind of stepped up. My biggest concern is the establishing of the running game keeps Patrick Mahomes off the field. And that's where it gets dangerous, is you take him off, hurts my DK lineup. But at 7,500 for Gainwell, if he just jumps in the end zone, I think I got my return. And then I have Hurts, as I mentioned, Mahomes and Kelsey. The dart throw of dart throws goes along with what Tyler was saying in tight end and Jody Fortson. Fortson at $200. It sounds just hilarious to even say. The only reason I'm taking Fortson is because at his size, at 6'6", there's been a lot of rumors and rumblings around, Chiefs podcasts, et cetera, that they're going to try to get him lined up. They're going to have a lot of 12 personnel to slow down the pass rush, especially in the red zone. And they're going to look for that big body. And at 6'6", he's the one that can actually get up over the undersized linebackers as well as the corners. It's totally a gamble. And that's the problem I have with DK is I don't understand, or in just DFS for me is I suck at it. I really do. Hate to say it, everybody listening. If you take my advice, I'm just not that good. I got lucky week 1 ever doing DFS, finished really high up and thought I was talking, knew what I was talking about. I don't. And but it makes sense to have someone like Fortson if he's targeted in the red zone, return 4x if he scores a touchdown, of course. And then last but not least is A.J. Brown. Joe, before you came on, I was waxing poetic about A.J. Brown against man coverage, which the Chiefs run the 8th most, I believe it is, in the NFL. A.J. Brown against man coverage is 4th in yards per route run, 2nd in receiving yards, 1st in touchdowns amongst wide receivers, 2nd amongst all pass catching players behind Travis Kelce, and 2nd most targets. So it just seems like that's an ideal matchup. If it works out, I'm not going to like it because it sounds like it's a lot of Eagles scoring, but that's what I predicted, a high scoring game, Chiefs win by 3.
Just to add to your Gainwell thing, 13 red zone touches in the last 5 games. Right. And those are not all blowouts. So they're definitely using him in the red zone. I really like that. And A.J. Brown, we've been talking about it. The Chiefs have had some problems with big physical receivers. Devontae Adams torched them in their last game. So I could definitely see that.
Against number 1 receivers, the Chiefs are damn near dead last in DVOA against the opposing team's wide receiver 1.
Good thing Devontae Smith is the wide receiver.
That's what I was just about to say. Nate, the question, since it's about the Chiefs, I want you to answer this. What do you think about Sky Moore this week? You saw 31 pass attempts, but you got all those other receivers coming back.
Exactly. I think that you're hard pressed to feel comfortable or confident them looking towards Sky Moore. I think he actually is behind Watson. I think he's behind obviously Juju and Kadarius Toney. And I think that they run a lot more 12 personnel where I think we'll see his snaps reduced quite a bit more so than what the expectation is, just to try to keep Mahomes upright. I think we'll see a lot more of the big heavy sets. Maybe that will, I mean, who knows? Sky Moore could very easily, he could break out and have 1 catch. It's all it really takes to have somebody. What Sky Moore, what is he, like 2,400 probably, something stupid like that?
He's cheap, yeah.
3,800. So, I mean, yeah, I would rather have Justin Watson personally for 2,000, I think.
I'd rather have the kicker for 200 more. Because, I mean, that's the one guy I keep going back that I think I should have more lineups. Andy Reid is not very aggressive. On 4th and short, he's going to kick field goals, and I've had very little of them so far. All right, Joe the Brain, let's hear what you're working with this week, buddy.
All right, well, I have some very similar thought processes to Nate. A.J. Brown is my captain. Obviously, I hear you guys on the Devonta Smith might actually be the number 1. That would be the main thing that worries me about this A.J. Brown pick. But yeah, it's exactly like Nate said. You look at DVOA, Kansas City, 31st against number 1s, 30th in yards per game to number 1 receivers. I mean, last week was like a successful game for them, and Jamar Chase had 75 yards. So it's not like they erased him at all. Yeah, I think A.J. Brown, you get him in man coverage. I'm also just hoping that him not doing much in the playoffs so far, granted, because the Eagles didn't have to do much in either game.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully that scares some people off of AJ. They're going to look at him and say he scored 12 points total the last 2 rounds. I don't know if I'm feeling that. But yeah, I think you get him. I think they're going to have to come up. They can't play the 2 deep shells that they've been playing at, I think, the highest rate in the NFL this year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can do that against Philly, against this offensive line. They're going to have some one-on-one out in the outside, and A.J. Brown against anybody one-on-one, let alone 2 of the 3 corners for the Chiefs are rookies. Give me A.J. Brown. Yeah, Mahomes, Kelce. I'm not going away from these 2. I think you got to lock those 2 guys in. We all agreed. Kelce is the automatic one, and like I said, game script doesn't matter to me. I'm betting on Patrick Mahomes. Juju Smith-Schuster at 5,600. I've got, again, when you look at DVOA, you look at every portion of the field because outsiders will break it down for you. The only area of the field where opposing offenses have a positive DVOA passing the ball is the short middle part of the field. So I'm just thinking you get Juju in the slot. That's where he's going to do work. At least one of these Kansas City wide receivers is going to have a much better game. Then I saw today someone said that no one has an over above like 40 yards on any of the receivers for Kansas City. One of the guys is going to hit it. And if I'm betting on one of them, it's Juju Smith-Schuster. Kenneth Gainwell, 5,000. Again, just same page as Nate. When you look at this Kansas City defense against opposing running backs in the passing game, 28th in DVOA. They give up 47 yards per game. That's 30th in the NFL. And yeah, he's also been seeing a high number of carries. I don't know if that's in part because they were just blowing teams out so far, but I think if they fall down, he gets a bunch of action. And if they're leading the whole game, he gets a bunch of action. So I'm going with him. And then Keith, like you said, Andy Reid, not the most aggressive guy on fourth downs. So Harrison Butker is my final guy. 3 field goals last game. Again, similar situation. If Andy Reid has a 4th and goal from the 5, he's probably going to kick it, even though he shouldn't. So you're round it out. And yeah, I think a lot of points, close game. I don't know who's going to win, but I think you got, for me, it's put whichever Eagles guy you want, put that guy as your captain, and then just Mahomes, Kelsey, and then build out those final 3 however you feel.
You know, I like the Butker talk more and more, and I'm looking a little bit deeper too. And, you know, the Eagles and the Chiefs both are tied with 55 red zone attempts on the season. And the Eagles have only allowed touchdowns, or well, at least 52% in red zone touchdowns, meaning we know that the Chiefs are going to get to the red zone. Well, we assume they will get to the red zone, but the Eagles are really clamped once they get into it, which, I mean, Harrison Butker could be a really good play. I think I might have to look back and try to see if how and who I can move around to get that in. So I like Butker a lot.
Yeah, I do too. The other lineup I have, because again, I wanted so bad to come on here and give the contrarian lineup I did for the Eagles and say that was the one I felt most comfortable about. But it's Patrick Mahomes off of his performance last week. I'm putting him in as a captain. I don't think he's actually going to be super owned as captain with the price. I think a lot of people are going to look at Kelsey or Jalen Hurts or Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown and miss the guy that scored at least 15 points in every game this season, 20 points or more in 14 to 17, 5 30-point games in that span. And on one leg, he just threw for 326 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he couldn't even hardly move. He has 10 games with 20-plus rushing yards. I think he is going to run more. Multiple passing touchdowns in 14 of 18. And as much as I think the Eagles are going to give them issues, I think Mahomes has enough to get it done. And a lot of times in these captains, if he ends up having a 25, 30-point game and nobody else scores more than 15, you're in trouble even if you hit one of the bargain plays. And I think Mahomes is by far the safest option to have that really good game. I'm putting Dallas Goedert in, who is my second favorite play this week, right behind Kelsey. I think he should be in most lineups. 6,400, scored double digits in 9 of the 11 games with Hurts as QB. In the 3 games since Hurts has came back from injury, 18 targets, 15 receptions. Chiefs giving up over their last 7 games at least 30 yards to tight ends in each one of them, 50 or more in 5 of those 7, 4 touchdowns in those 7 games. Goddard's catchable rate is 94.1% on catchable balls this year on 60-plus attempts. I would be getting that guy involved if he's that effective when you throw it to him. Give me Pacheco, 7,200. You guys talked about it. I'm 100% with Tyler that, boy, if the Chiefs hit this pick, which is starting to look more and more like they might have, he is the perfect weapon for this offense because he's both physical, but he's also got that speed. I really like what I've seen in the passing game from him. But just on DK, 9 of the last 10 games, double digits. The only ones he didn't score double digit in, 9.7 points. So that's his floor over the last 10 games, 9.7 points. Double digit carries in 9 of his last 11, 15 receiving yards or more, 6 of his last 8. Big one for me, 10 red zone attempts in his last 6. He's only scored 2 in his last 7 games. So I think that there's touchdown progression coming. He's got to score a touchdown. He's getting carries in the red zone. I think there's a good chance that happens. And he out-touched McKinnon 28-16 in the 2 postseason games. So he is their back now. I mean, they're going to him. On the other side, I'm taking about Miles Sanders, who I talked about earlier. I just think that they're going to need him to run the ball one way or the other, and it's a good chance that he scores a touchdown. he's somebody I'm going with over and over again. Okay, so because I have Mahomes and I'm not going Kelsey, I'm going to go the two receivers that play the slot the most. Marquez Scantling, who I talked about earlier, 6,200. He looked like the receiver that Mahomes had felt the most comfortable with outside of Travis Kelsey. That was a big game. I just feel like the fact that he had his most targets in, he's had 7 or more targets in 3 of his last 4. It seems like they're figuring out they have this, surreal connection here. In 3 of the last 4 games, again, he's seen at least 1 red zone target and over 100+ air yards. I like that. But I'm also going with Juju Schuster, 5,600 to finish out the lineup. He lines up in the slot 38.7% of the time. That is the most of any Chiefs receiver, including Kelsey. And I talked about Philly's struggles with slot receivers. That's where you can hit them. The not good for Schuster. He scored 22 points over his last 5. So this is a pretty risky play. But before that, 16 points or more in 5 and 8. And I just think the Eagles try to take away Kelsey. I think there's a chance that that's going to be their game plan is we're going to rush 4. We're going to try to bracket Kelsey, and let's see which other one of you guys can beat us and hope we can get the pass rush there. So that means somebody underneath. Schuster is only seeing 47.7 air yards per game on the season. So there's your guy. If they're getting rid of the ball quickly, as Joe was saying, over the middle, I think his floor is 4 receptions, maybe scores a touchdown. So that is my other lineup. And again, I was the guy just saying that Kelsey should be in every single lineup, and I didn't put him in my actual one, but he is in my contrarian, and I do think he should be in most of your lineups. But sometimes you got to make a decision. And again, in a small slate, I look at if I'm going Mahomes captain, most of the people that have Mahomes as captain, they're throwing Kelsey with them. So I'm going to go the other direction and take the 2 receivers and hope Kelsey is the guy that doesn't have the monster game, and maybe one or both of them can have better games in their point totals. And then we're on our way to a winning lineup. So anything else, any of you guys want to add on this game before we wrap this bad boy up?
No, I mean, you guys all hit on Pacheco, and, I was actually shocked. Not shocked by watching him, but shocked at some of the numbers that he actually has put up. And, in the playoffs, he leads all skill players for the Chiefs in total yards, with 186. So it's not like he's just, electric. They call him, I think they're calling him Sparky, like the Energizer Bunny, because he just keeps going and going. So if that holds true, I love it. And I think that will be excellent. We saw that Jermaine Pratt tried tackling him against, and he bounced out, and that was one of the pivotal plays.
He runs hard.
He runs really hard, and I love. And so since week 10, he's 3rd in the league with 754 yards, and 469 of those were after contact. So it's the type of guy you want to lean on if you can, especially if you can take some of the pressure off of Mahomes. But it's just so hard to work these lineups in, guys. I find myself wanting to do an all Chiefs. Here's my all Chiefs lineup if you guys want. It's Mahomes at captain. I have Harrison Butker, Juju, Isaiah Pacheco, and then it's not all Chiefs because you got to throw some Eagles in. So I got to have Hurts and Kenneth Gainwell. So it's not a terrible. No, I actually don't hate it. I don't love it, but I don't hate it because if all those guys are scoring, Butker's going to get 4 extra points, and that's not probably to justify. But whatever.
I do believe if you're in big fields, you have to get extra creative because the chances of you hitting a lineup that is not, fairly contrarian and not a bunch of other people sharing it with you or being very close to one player, y'all have 5 of the 6 players and his one player does better. There'll be hundreds of lineups with that exact same situation. It's okay to do that. And the one thing I would recommend, though, is if you think one team is going to win big and you go heavy on them, you got to go their defense because that just, whether it's through sacks, turnovers, defensive touchdowns, whatever, if you're going to have 4 to 5 guys on one team, I feel like the defense has to be one of those plays. Anybody else got anything I want to touch on the game?
Trade for Devontae Smith in Dynasty.
Yeah,
for sure.
I agree.
Seriously. I really do think you are going to see 1 or 2 options here. Either Philly is going to just blow them out and dominate them from the get-go, or the Chiefs lead a comeback. But either way, I see Philly having a large advantage in this game, whether it's throughout the entire game or 3/4 of it this Sunday.
Joe, you missed the unnecessary shot that Jorge said when he said the Eagles will get up big early, a la the Falcons-Pats Super Bowl. I'm like, damn, dude, last show of the year coming in throwing daggers, dude. Even Joe wouldn't do that to you.
Hey, Brady can't hurt you anymore, Keith. Just remember that.
That's right. We vowed to never meet in person until that son of a bitch was done.
That's right. You're free.
Wait till Derek Carr doesn't sign with New Orleans, and it's Tom Brady out of retirement coming back to New Orleans, and get him twice a year.
That would be literally hell on earth for me, because I hate the Saints and I hate Tom Brady. All right, before we get out of here, I want to go around. Everybody tell me where we can find your stuff. Nate, do you want to brag about your Dynasty IDP ranking we got going on now? Back-to-back top 5, right?
No. Unfortunately, it wasn't top. It was.
Was it top 10?
I think 6.
6.
Yeah,
oh
6.
God! Damn.
Well, no, and
how far are you fallen?
I know, but thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. It's it's more as much as I'm probably just not giving myself enough credit like I typically do. It's more just a grind, and just doing it puts you ahead of probably the majority. But I do it because I want to have my peers, you guys, continue to believe in me, and I have a fucking hefty, lofty ceiling to keep up with all you guys. So if I fall too far, then before you know it, I got a terrible intro song. We don't have, not even on the Dynasty Fix anymore, or the Daily Dynasty. Oh my God, I can't even get it right. The Daily Fix. No one tweets about me, and then before you know it, I'm not even at the expo. It's just Travis Kelce and Carrie.
But you are the man, and we appreciate you coming on. Tyler, what you working on, buddy?
We finally have Dynasty 365 coming back. Jorge and Bill Mustafa recorded the first episode. I'm getting back into it next week once a lot of things settle down, but that will be on the Fantasy and Frames feed. But most importantly, Jorge and Zach Berger, our director of content at Fantasy and Frames, brought on an incredible crew.
An army.
Yes, a veritable army. And a lot of them are doing Dynasty content. They're putting out all kinds of Dynasty target profiles. They're putting out all kinds of Dynasty prospect profiles. And those are all going to be on our YouTube channel. You can also watch them at our website, fantasyandframes.com. So please go subscribe to the YouTube channel, check out the website, because they are busting their ass and they're all doing an awesome job.
All right. The CEO, Jorge?
For all the hard work Nate's done with IDP, over the years, it's congratulations on the top 10, top 6 finish this year. That was, you never cease to amaze me, my friend. Tyler, it's great to have you back. Great to have Dynasty content going. For all the new people who are watching and listening, we cannot wait to work with you. We are very happy to have you on board the Fantasy and Frames bandwagon here. And I speak for everybody here at Fantasy and Frames. We can't wait to produce content for you, the fantasy football content consumer. But I can't leave the show without saying hats off to you, Keith and Joe, for an amazing first season here at Fantasy and Frames with the Daily Fix Show, handing out tons and tons and tons of actionable, useful, profitable DFS information to the content, to the consumers out there. I am utterly speechless. Thank you very much for your hard work and everything you've done for us this season, and looking forward to next year.
Really appreciate that. We don't call him Joe the Brain Matz for nothing, though. I mean, anybody that gives you De'Ami Brown for like $3,000, I'm going, Joe, De'Ami Brown, are we serious right now? He had like 26 points. That's my boy. Joe, tell me what's going on, other than we just got back from the Senior Bowl.
One of my roommates has been telling me, he's like, hey, let's start a Dynasty league with some of our friends. And I was like, sweet. I'm just going to start injecting all of our content straight in my veins as soon as the Super Bowl ends. So I'm going to get the advantage on everybody. But I'm taking a little break after the Super Bowl, just going to watch a ton of college basketball and then start getting ready for the draft prep. so that I can know which receiver will do a Diami Brown type stuff next year.
There you go.
Are you an Arizona basketball fan?
Oh yeah,
I am.
Oh, I just was
Thankfully,
watching the
Huge
Illini
Arizona basketball
Elite
fan.
8 game against Arizona just a couple days ago. If you need a
How dare
recap,
you.
What a fond memory.
that was that is the 28-3 Falcons Patriots.
You're supposed to earmuffs
really
before you
is.
say something like that to Joe, man.
That one is my dad's fault. He was talking to my uncle. He's like, "Oh, are we going to the Final Four this year?" Like with 4 minutes left, and yeah, he jinxed it, and Jaron Williams took care of the rest.
Luther Head.
So,
Yeah, it was a great game. Sorry, see, Keith, that was me just easing some of the burden of you from Jorge maliciously
evening it out.
attacking you.
Maliciously.
His was, I think, like actually premeditated. I didn't know. I just thought that. Mine's random. Mine was like second degree manslaughter. Jorge was murder.
Well, my wife always says that she knows when somebody is a friend of mine once they start talking shit to me and making fun of the things I love, and vice versa. Because that's when you know you love somebody. Is when you can really needle them about the stuff that otherwise, if just some rando comes up to you and says that, I'm gonna flip the fuck out. So fuck you, man. But I really do appreciate all you guys coming on. Again, sadly, this is the last Daily Fix for a while, but I think me and Joe, we'll get together. We'll do some best ball stuff. We definitely maybe we'll do some draft rankings and stuff before the draft. We'll be around. And also I would appreciate, I'm going to be over at Fantasy Six Pack. I do a weekly DFS golf article. If you check that out, that would be fantastic. And we are actually starting a podcast next week. It's called Two Off the Tee. It will be a gambling and DFS podcast with my boy Alan, who Joe knows well. He went with us to the Senior Bowl. Alan is literally an aspiring comedian, one of the funniest dudes I know, and also an unbelievable degenerate gambler. And the super contest this year that he was in, he hit 64% of his picks. That's picking 5 games a week with the spread. Finished like 19th out of 12,000 people. The dude is really good. He's very good at golf. We had a great stretch a few years ago in it, so we'd really appreciate you checking that out. And then obviously, finally, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're moving to more of that kind of content, which makes sense. I mean, let's be honest. Nobody has an attention span anymore. But we will still have our shows where we will give you all the, information you want in long form, but we're just trying to get more tighter stuff for you to see, that we know people have, more of a chance to listen to a 5-minute video on YouTube than an hour podcast. But I think it's great things are ahead for Fantasy and Frames. Me and Joe are absolutely honored and thrilled to be a part of this team. And we're just glad we didn't fuck it up, because we're not going to lie. These guys are really good. And when we got here, I was like, Joe, once if our picks kind of, because it happens. And luckily it was a good year. So we're going to continue to try to get at that next year. But we really appreciate everybody. Much love. Good luck in the Super Bowl. And for the Fantasy and Frames crew, we'll see you soon.